Hey, are we live? It looks like we're live. What's happening, everybody? I hope everybody's having a fantastic whatever day you're watching this. If you're new to the channel, this is Two Wheel Tuesdays. It's my live show. I do a lot of ride and review videos for Stubbs Cycles, and I'll also do my own personal ride along. Sometimes I'm doing, I don't know, some type of a how to video. But in the live show, this allows me a vehicle to be able to interact directly with you guys. And, if I've got a video that I'm trying to work through, it'll allow me sometimes the opportunity to discuss a topic that just for whatever reason is not working out in terms of a standalone video. So, in saying all of that, if it's your first time, welcome. Basically, this is not much more than a background noise generator, usually talking about motorcycles, but there's really no telling what'll end up popping up on this show. Um, I'll guide the conversation as long as I can, but once we start interacting, usually the show just kind of goes off on its own. So, with that, let's dive into this topic, which is Chinese motorcycles. I got to tell you guys something. I do as many ride and review videos as I possibly can. And one of the things that I really haven't had an opportunity to do is ride some of these newer Chinese motorcycles. Now, part of that is because, well, they don't necessarily have the most widespread distribution, right? I mean, it's kind of hard to get your hands on one. But also, some dealerships really aren't all that keen of lending out motorcycles for reviews, which they don't really know how they're going to come back. I try to make my reviews as transparent as possible. I will admit, though, that I never have a bad time on motorcycle. So a lot of times, I might be talking about a bike and it almost sounds like I'm putting together a commercial for it. It's probably just because I was having so much fun. And I always ask that you please forgive my bias in some cases. But for the most part, I will usually be as transparent as I can be, mainly because I'm talking as I'm riding the bike. So you're getting whatever brain dropping I have at that moment. So it's about as honest as it gets. But in saying all of that, the Chinese motorcycle thing is a bit polarizing. Skids is in, got the flex with the specs. I like it. So let's kind of dive into this. Also, too, before I really get into the topic, a lot of times the live feed it doesn't work all that great. So if at any time the live feed does sketch out, I always ask that you just throw it in the chat saying, hey, the live feed croaked. I'll at least get the chat so I won't be sitting here talking to myself, although I am kind of sitting here talking to myself. Anyway, would it matter? I don't know. Anyway, diving back into it, I can. Oh, wait, Skins is saying you can always have a good time on two wheels. I can make a case for an electric. I won't get one, but there's a case for it. I don't. As to the electrics, I am very polarized when it comes to electric two-wheel conveyances. I'm pretty cool with the electric bikes, for example, electric scooters, things like that. But when it comes to electric motorcycles, it's kind of difficult because of the way that you would ride a motorcycle being significantly different. Like, in other words, the ask of a motorcycle is different than the ask of an e-bike. And the motorcycles just don't have the range quite yet. Not to say it won't ever get there, but for the time being, they do have their place, but it's a little bit of a hard sell, as we've noticed. And speaking of hard sell, talking about the Chinese motorcycles. So, as I'm talking about these bikes, I want to, how do I say this? I want to try to be as open-minded as I possibly can, but I also want to be realistic with what my expectations would be with any of these Chinese manufacturers that we're going to discuss tonight. And it's also an ask for you, dear viewer, just for some things to consider. A lot of folks go, Chinese, low quality, whatever. Look, whatever device you're watching this video on, it was made in China. And also keep another thing in mind. A lot of the things that are assembled in the United States or assembled in Europe, assembled in Australia, in many cases, that part that was assembled, basically screwed together on local soil, was cast was cast in China with Chinese raw materials and was only shipped to its new home to be assembled and run through a local quality control bureau. That's about as close as you can get to assembled or whatever in local terms. It doesn't mean that it wasn't realistically made in China. So just keeping that understanding in mind, and that, of course, that thought experiment blossoms out to pretty much every aspect of your daily life. It's all made in China. So why not the motorcycle? Well, I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing. So let's talk about a few of these. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of these motorcycles. The first few I'm going to talk about are very similar. These are motorcycles from Vosges, from CF Moto, from Zontes, and from sort of from QJ. The thing is that these are motorcycles all in the 100 horsepower range. A horsepower range that is, although not mind-blowingly fast, it's a horsepower range that lends itself to a sporty feel, but it also lends itself to the beginner motorcycle buyer. The beginner just got your license and is now looking for a motorcycle individual. Typically, these folks are young and they're not going to have the money to throw down on a new bike, but they want to get a new bike. They also understand that getting a new motorcycle and getting out with your new license means that there's going to be accidents. You're going to drop the thing. You're going to maybe have a couple of low sides here or there. Things happen, right? And so spending a ton of money on a motorcycle is not necessarily the best idea, especially when you're just getting started, but you still want something fun, right? Well, let's dive into them. First of all, the first one I want to talk about is going to be the Vosges RR 600. Now, the reason why I want to talk about this bike is this is one of those kind of interesting motorcycles to me. You get all that is motorcycle, and keep in mind, all of these bikes are sub $10,000 machines. In fact, in some cases, they're significantly under $6,000. I'm sorry, $10,000 or 6,500 pounds, British sterling. But here's the interesting thing. So going to this website, one of the interesting things that I like about these manufacturers, these Chinese manufacturers, is that every single one of them has horsepower, advertised at least, at the flywheel. So you have advertised horsepower, advertised torque, you've got displacement, compression ratios, all of that. It's full disclosure. And I really do appreciate that about these Chinese manufacturers. Oh, before I dive any deeper in this, I do have to say that every one of these bikes that I'm going to be illustrating for you guys are all Euro 5 homologated. So there you go. Why are they not in the United States? I don't know. Politics, maybe. But I can tell you, they're not that far away. So anyway, the Vosges, it's checking in. I think this one's checking in just shy of 10,000 bucks, whatever it is. You get 99 horsepower, 64 Newton meters of torque out of a 662 cc L4. Uh-oh, that's something else to consider. Most of these motorcycles coming from China, they're all 4 cylinders, or many of them are. And this is where things get cool. You get all of the sound, all of the noise, all of the fury of a 4-cylinder. You get a motorcycle that, yeah, it's tuned for more mid-range and low-end power. These things aren't screaming, as you can see. The Vosges 660 is only going to spin to 11,500. But it's going to be accessible power. And if you're just starting out, you're just getting your first taste of sport bike life, motorcycling in general maybe, and maybe it's sport bikes that you happen to like, these are motorcycles that are not overly committed. They have a much more comfortable riding position. There's a lot going for these bikes. And that's another thing, before I dive too deep, not to get hung up on, some of the swamp here, but There are multiple motorcycles in this class that are really good. And you can compare them to the likes of the CBR 650. You can compare this to the Triumph Daytona 660. And in some respects, the Aprilia RS 660. You get the idea. A lot of these motorcycles that are hovering in that 100 horsepower range, which so many people tend to like to gravitate towards. Again, China's doing well with that. So Vosges, again, just shy of 10 grand gets you 100 horsepower. Not too shabby, right? Now, look, you may not have ever heard of Vosges, and I get that. Hell, I hadn't heard of them either. But let's go ahead and switch gears here to a manufacturer that we've all heard of, and that is CF Moto. Now, let me tell you a little something about CF Moto. The problem that a lot of folks have when you start talking about Chinese motorcycles is that this will be the only brand that they can rattle off the top of their head. CF Moto has done a bizarrely good job of marketing, bringing to market the product placing, pricing, and promotion, the 4 P's of marketing for their machines. They are criminally good looking in person. Blacked out rear sprocket, brake vents. It's got TFT screen, winglet type thing. It's got all kinds of stuff going on with it. At least the 675 did. There's other ones that do. You get the point. It's a damn good looking motorcycle. Again, roughly 400, roughly roughly 100 horsepower motorcycle. You get this thing pulled right back up here. So roughly geez Louise, I'm going to get this right or wrong every time. Roughly 430 pounds and roughly 100 horsepower. I'm getting ahead of myself. All of these motorcycles, by the way, are around 440 pounds. They're not lightweights. They all, if not most, if not all, have steel trellis frames. They are built a little bit differently than what you would consider from one of the Japanese super bikes like the 636 or a Gixxer 600. It's not necessarily the same. They look the same, but they're not exactly the same when it comes to that mission statement. And, for the pricing that you're looking at, in fact, the CF Moto, getting back to that, let's talk about the price on this thing. Yeah, what's up with just shy or right at $8,000? Okay, so you get a lot of bike, a lot of performance for $8,000. And again, if you're making 95 horsepower, you're making 100, okay? And I just want to illustrate that because all of these bikes are right there in that range, you get, in this case, full 5-inch TFT, adjustable rider modes, all kinds of stuff going on with this bike. And it's all, and connectivity. You get all of this technology wrapped into this one machine. Again, this is something that a lot of Japanese manufacturers can't claim. And again, let's not forget, I'm going to keep bringing this up while we're talking about it. All the bikes that I'm going to be talking about are Euro 5 compliant. So again, the question is, why aren't these motorcycles here in the States? Well, the CF Moto is. And by the way, by all accounts, it's one of the best motorcycles that you can buy in that 100 horsepower range. Pretty much everybody that I've talked to that's ridden this bike absolutely loves it. They understand what they're buying. They've shelled out the money, so they know what they've spent. They're not expecting $11,000, $12,000, $13,000 type of performance envelope. They're expecting exactly what they're paying for, and they're getting a lot of it. And at 429 pounds, the CF Moto is one of the lightweights in this class coming from China. And one of the things that I famously love about their brochure here is, behold, 429 pounds of aluminum, electronics, and attitude. I like that, but it really does make sense. You might think, God dang, 430 pounds, that's heavy for a bike like this. I mean, it's a middleweight. Don't get caught up in that. Again, this is a lightweight in the class. So it's something to brag about. In a class and in a world with these types of motorcycles checking in at basically 440 pounds, it is a lightweight, but it's a lightweight not only in actual mass, but it's also a lightweight when it comes to pricing. So again, with as many people as I've talked to and interacted with this CF Moto, they love it. And the other thing is that these are folks that would not have thought to buy a Daytona 660 or a CBR 650. They wouldn't have even thought to go down that route, mainly because either the cost itself, or they just like all of the gadgets that these bikes have. So they're all incredibly good. But let's dive back into some of the lesser known motorcycles here in just a second. Let me check in with everybody. Skids checking in. If I lived in Dallas downtown, could possibly work. Oh, talking about the e-bike. Yeah. A lot of folks in the more densely populated areas love the e-bikes. Lime's in saying, good evening, Professor B, and everybody else that's on tonight. Hello, Lime. DM is in. And good evening, chat and friends. Yeah, got the ball guy with the flex and the specs. I like it. Said, I'm lucky to catch you live. Happy to have you, brother. Skids checking in with DM. Kenzie's saying, what's up, Professor? Sorry, late for the chat. No, you're good. Went on a little bit early, trying to drag the show into like the 9 o'clock Central Standard range. Mackenzie, okay, so Skids, I'm going to Team MS for the tune, Team MSC for the tune on my 675 and a titanium Sanderson exhaust. Shipping down 93 to the wheels and drop 14 pounds. That is awesome. By the way, yeah, it's crazy how much these Euro 5 bikes drop when it comes to weight when you swap exhaust. That's going to be a sick little bike. And see, that's one of the things. It's one of the fun things about bikes like this. Oh, and again, before I dive into some more of the more maybe obscure, if you want to call them that, Chinese brands, this is one thing I do want to illustrate for you guys. That 100 horsepower range, you know, that was the standard fare for 600s back, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. Really before the 600s evolved, they went from like 100 to 105 horsepower. It's like it's an evolutionary jump to say 115 to 120 horsepower. And before that, though, this was the 600cc class. And more to that point, those motorcycles, dollar per income, were in this range. They didn't cost the adjusted $11,000, $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 that some of these other motorcycles or the more high-strung bikes of today will cost you. So in a weird way, like a super weird way, it's almost like these are I don't want to call them retro because that's absolutely not right, but these are the spiritual successor to the original like 1988 Ninja 600, if you will. If you think of it in those terms, I know it's a little bit of a mind bender, but if you think of it like that, in terms of performance envelope, you know, cost per horsepower adjusted, and you start to do the little thing where all the stuff starts to, like the mathematics go around your head, it almost makes sense in that respect. And it really makes the more high-strung 600 class, like the 636 or the R6, GSX R600, it really does kind of make those bikes look like race bikes at that point. These are true sport street bikes. Ryan's Armac said, I really want to ride one of the 750SSs when it hits. I might get one, but got tired of waiting on it. Skids, the old lady already has 158 miles on the 450SS. Nice. Okay, so next on the list, we're going to go to a brand that I really didn't have a whole lot of understanding of, but it's Zontes. So here we are again. Now, this is a little bit more expensive. $6,800 is going to get you, well, it's shy of $10,000 dollars US if we could get it here in the States. Let me see something real quick. Bear with me. Just mess that one all up. All right, I'm going to scroll down here. And it is a good looking bike. So real quickly, we'll go over the specs. 700 cc's, 95 horsepower, 74 newton meters, 186 kilograms dry. This is probably more like that 200, 204, 203. I'd say call it 200 flat kilogram curb weight, if you will. So I just want to make sure that, you know, we're kind of clarifying some of this. But I mean, look, it's a hell of a good looking bike. Have that playing while we're talking. But it's a good looking bike, and these are motorcycles again that are going to call to folks that are music on the background. And look at this. I mean, this doesn't really cost all that much. It really does cost less. At that point, frankly, it really does make you wonder, at what point is it just okay to have fun with a motorcycle? You know, when you start getting really deep into the weeds with these bikes, one thing I did want to say is that when you start to look at these machines and then you start to look at what they would, I guess, evolve into, like a 636, there's such a vast void between those bikes. And I think that this is where it becomes a little bit difficult to justify spending, you know, saving money, if you will, on a Chinese motorcycle, because you do have bikes like the 636, which with a non-ABS only costs $11,300. It's not that far of a difference between those bikes. But in a world where, I mean, every dollar counts, every dollar matters, and it's easy to get wrapped up in the, well, it's only $1,000 more. Well, then for another couple of thousand, you get this. Yeah, but just for one more thousand. I mean, if you're already in for a penny, in for a pound, right? And see what I'm saying? If you have a hard budget and you really only want to spend that $8,000, that $9,000, whatever the number is, these are amazing motorcycles. And it gives the buyer an opportunity to have all of the technology that may not be baked into the cake of some of these more expensive Japanese motorcycles. But I at least want to showcase this bike for you. And again, ask, you know, is this the type of bike that you would be interested in if you're into that entry-level sport bike category of machine? And it's really difficult to not just want to grab its cheeks and you're cute one, aren't you? I mean, I just, it's fun for me. Plus, again, look at the rider triangle on this bike, and this is something you're going to find a lot of. Look how much higher that the handlebar is, that the grip is, versus where the seat is. You know, it's a solid 4 inches over the seat, if not 6 inches over the seat. And that's significant. You know, that's a bike that is not going to wear you out. That's a bike that's going to be easier on you than any of these more, I don't know, more committed sport bikes would be. So, you know, no, it's not in that 120, 110 horsepower range, but it's not that far off. And based on the pricing and the looks and the styling, I mean, that is a really good looking bike. You know, you start looking at it from different angles. I mean, look at that 3/4 view. I mean, that 3/4 view is nice looking. And again, Euro 5 compliant. So, I mean, you put exhaust on it and a tune, you're going to drop probably 14, 15, 13 pounds at least. And you're going to have a bike that looks good. It's going to make good power. No, it's not going to blow your hair back when it comes to actual outright total power, but it's all going to be accessible. Let's see if we can pull this back up here. let's see. Here we go. And again, we've got full disclosure when it comes to power output. 95 horsepower at, let's all say it together now, 11,000 RPM, 11.2, but close enough, right? It's in that 11 flat range. 74 Newton meters at 8,500, which is to say, you call it as close as it doesn't make a difference, 50 pound-feet of torque. So, these are the types of bikes that folks are buying. And believe me, there are so many of these. I mean, we're just going to keep kind of going through these. Now, this kind of wraps up what the, what you would expect to see when it comes to some of these more entry-level bikes. Now we're going to start getting into a bike that is, and I've got to admit, this is one that is pretty impressive. Okay, now we talked about the 100-horse bikes. Let's start talking about stuff that's a little bit more aggressive. And this is one that we're gonna move over to QJ now. And I gotta say, guys, well, before we do that, let me check in with you guys. Scroll back up here. Oh, right. Yeah. So roughly 420 pounds. A lot of that's the light one. Saying hard to argue against the Street Triple at 10.9 or even the MT-09 at 9,800, both with 120 horsepower. I'm a sucker for the MT-09. True of us all. One of the most well-rounded do-it-all motorcycles. The creepy thing about the MT-09 is just how, or the XSR 900. The thing that's crazy about that bike is that it doesn't really weigh anything. Again, so right around 420 pounds, but it's got a lot of power for that weight. I don't know why. This is one of those, I don't know why we don't get the XSR 900 GP. That is, to me, that is criminal. Like it is a complete lapse for whatever reason. But to me, it just feels like a complete lapse of judgment on the part of Yamaha to not give us the XSR 900 GP. Will we ever get it? I don't know. If you're not familiar, let me pull it up for you real quick. The GP is just, I mean, oh my gosh, which one do I pick? I just got to pick one. Here we go. Let me pull this thing up for you. Oh, hell, it's trying to hit me up with, hold up. No, I do not want to do whatever that was that it was asking me to do. That was creepy. Anyway, we'll just go with this. Let me show you guys this GP. Again, if you've never seen one, I mean, how do you not just absolutely fall in love with this? I mean, what? This is one of those bikes that would sell so unbelievably well. And I don't know if you can look like right down wherever it is over there. It does. You can get a lower fairing for it. You can obviously get a tail tidy for it, tune, airbox, all of that. You can make this bike make plenty of power for what it is. And different handlebar configurations, all kinds of stuff you can get for this bike. And I mean, damn it, this is one of those bikes where I would buy it just to add it to the fleet. Like it would have to be a here, take my money type of situation. It's existing technology. The XSR costs what, 10 grand? How much would this cost? 11, maybe 12. I just, if they would just Yamaha, come on, man. Seriously. Listen, Yamaha, do this for us. If you're not going to if you're never going to get around to making any more R9s, looking at you, Yamaha, directly right now. Do you feel my presence in the room? if you're not going to give us any R9s anytime soon because of reasons, and the R1 seems to not be a thing anymore, question mark, at least give us this. Holy, I mean, are you kidding me? This is me losing my mind. And because I loved riding the XSR 900, you know, how do you not fall in love with that? Anyway, I am digressing very quickly. Anyway, how do you not just love that thing? Let me check in with you guys real quick, and then we'll get to some of the more powerful Chinese bikes. Oh, Ryan's saying, yeah, that Zontes does look good. It looks really good, doesn't it? I'm all for cheaper insurance too. Amen. Sam's in. What's up? Oh, Skid saying, I want to know when the 500 SR boom might make an appearance over here. I don't know why that thing hadn't made it. That would be one of the fastest selling bikes I think that they would have if they bring it over here. Mackenzie Armac saying, when the boom hits, I'm going to be throwing money at it for sure. Oh, well, I just messed this all up. Sam's liking the cruisers. Yeah, I mean, they do have their place, and Chinese manufacturers are making cruiser type bikes too. Armac saying, you know what I hate, Skids? The USA always the last to get the bikes. That really grinds my gears, for sure. Sam saying my back's not what it used to be. I can't ride standard bikes anymore. They kill my back. Sport bikes are real easy for me to ride, even with a completely blown out right knee. Skids liking the cruiser life, but needs something quick. I like that. Yeah, that 500 Voom is a cool looking bike. Skid saying, well, the young skids would tell you the R6. Me now, man, you have to get out there and ride some bikes to see what fits. That is the truth. Sam saying a Harley with some cams and carb work. I just could not do an old school Harley. I'd have to do new school. All right, so getting back to it. Okay, so let's go to QJ. This is a bike, let me tell you guys right now, this is a bike that I am, how do I put this? I'm very excited about this bike because this is, in essence, this is China's answer to the full super sport platform. This is the SRK 800 RC. They also have a double R. Look, let's just cut to the chase. Let me get you guys the specs on this thing. Because, again, this is one of the things that I love about these Chinese manufacturers, man. They do full disclosure. This motorcycle, it's a 4-cylinder, because of course it is. 778 cc's. Starting to sound a little bit familiar, right? GSXR 750. It's 205 kilograms. So what? 440 something, 450 pounds. It's not a lightweight, but remember, we're not buying the ultimate super sport here, but it still ain't bad. 125 horsepower. Not too shabby. 78 newton meters of torque. So about 54 pound-feet of torque. We're talking about a motorcycle that is going to be a lot easier on the pocket than some of these more high-strung middleweights. But I guess the main point, by the way, there's your homologation. If I've mentioned this before, but I just want to show you guys almost every one of all of the ones that I've been showing you guys, they're all E5 plus bikes, Euro 5 plus compliant when it comes to the emissions. So keep that in mind before you start comparing this, because it's real easy to do. Before you start comparing it to the GSXR 750, remember, again, this is a Euro 5 compliant motorcycle. And say what you would, or believe what you would like to believe about the GSXR 750, that's a 135 horsepower bike. Look, if it puts down 120 to the rear tire, I've seen them make a little less than that, by the way, but between 119, 118, and 122. Okay, so it's around 135 to 137 brake horsepower, keeping in mind that Suzuki doesn't advertise that number, but that's about where it shapes up stock for stock. It is more than the QJ. Of course it is. But it's also like a Euro medieval times versus Euro 5 plus in terms of its emissions. So it's not hampered by what this motorcycle is having to deal with to be E5 compliant. And so, yeah, there might be 8, 9, 10, 6, whatever horsepower that's getting soaked up by having this super restrictive, not good at doing much of anything except for just passing gas exhaust system. So it's something to think about when you're kind of working through the mindset of this type of stuff. But yeah, overall, a really good bike. And let's also not forget that this is QJ. Well, it's very similar to this. It is in essence this. This is their homologated next gen super sport bike. So yeah, you know what? And I get it. QJ, they're in dead last place right now in super sport. It doesn't matter that they're in last place. These are inexpensive motorcycles. And okay, so they're in dead last place. At least they're participating. You know, there are manufacturers out there that aren't, and there are also manufacturers out there that are fielding or at least homologated to field motorcycles that are no longer in production. I'm looking dead at you, Triumph. Could you just build? Anyway, I don't even want to get into that's a whole different. I got a little bit of a Triumph's kind of on my shit list right now. But anyway, but no, look, they're in dead last place. And you know what? That's okay. They're out there competing. They're out there showing that they want to be part of this group. You can't win them all. And look, somebody's got to come in last place anyway. Best that it is more or less, I guess, an upstart when it comes to sport bikes. But they're out there giving it a shot. And for that, you got to give them respect and you have to give them the credit that they deserve for it. So, I don't know how much more love I can give QJ because we can't get them in the States yet. But I will say this. Okay, so this motorcycle, again, let me scroll back down to the specs. It's impressive. It's impressive for what you are getting and what you're basically paying for here. Again, 125 horsepower, 12,000 RPM. You know, you've got all of the requisite technology to go along with it as well. So anything to say that's bad about it? I mean, you can't really complain about the weight. They're all in the same weight class. I don't know. Definitely a brand to keep your eye out for. No doubt about it. All right, I'm going to check in with you guys. Oh, hang on. Oh, Skid's hanging out with Sam. Oh. We've evolved into some of the Harley stuff going on. Let's see. DM saying, Sam, I really like the sport touring stuff, like the old Kawasaki Concourse, very cool bike, or the FJ 1300, another very good bike. One that doesn't get the credit it deserves, by the way. Sam's liking shovel heads. All right. Oh, Skid's liking the K1600. Yeah, 6 cylinders. Very smooth from what I understand. It's supposed to be really good bikes too. Mm. All right. Back at it. Okay, so now we're going to get into ZH or ZX rather. I'm sorry. Let me get back to here. And we're going to go over the last one that I want to go over. Now, this one, unfortunately, I cannot get the website. I don't know if it's a situation where we just don't have access to it. If ZX doesn't have a website, maybe it's a Chinese website that for whatever reason gets blocked or something. I don't know. Anyway, ZX makes a few different motorcycles that do well globally, though, so I don't really understand why there seems to be some kind of a block. But Kobe is another Chinese manufacturer that make this bike. Now, the ZXJC 500RR, it's a 500cc sport bike that is making about 86, 88 horsepower, somewhere in that range. It doesn't weigh all that much. It's picking up a lot of momentum, though, in other markets. And by all accounts, if you ever get a chance, check out that bike. Look for some videos. There's a dude that was doing a lot of videos with this thing, and it doesn't suck, okay? And for the price, yeah, I think this thing checks in at like $4,700. I mean, this is one of those. I didn't mention it with the other bikes again because the availability is kind of hit and miss. Plus, it's a little bit lower in terms of displacement, but I think it's a lot lighter too. Look, either way, it's a hell of a good looking bike. And it just goes to show that these Chinese manufacturers, they're not playing around when it comes to putting a very slick looking motorcycle together. So in saying that, slide back over here. This one is going to be a triple. Bring this up here. So for the new bike, it's going to be 150 horsepower and a curb weight of 370 pounds. Now, I don't know if that's going to hold any water. But with that being said, it's really something to look forward to. And in a class that hasn't really had any innovation, like none, in a very long time, that middleweight sport bike class, well, now we're starting to get into some pretty serious iron here. I mean, that's 150 claimed horsepower, which I'm going to assume, I don't think it's going to be as light as what they're saying, but let's say it is right around 400 pounds. That's still very light. And if this thing does end up going through everything that it takes to get to the States, again, I wouldn't think that any of these bikes that we're talking about tonight should stay out of the United States for very long, because just the appetite seems to be so great for the middleweight sport bike class of bikes. So in saying all of that, this would be the last on the list. And for any of those folks that are out there that would say, well, this kind of bike, for the kind of money that you're spending, you should get more. Well, here's a lot more. And at 150 true, honest to goodness horsepower, it kind of makes you wonder. I mean, it's 180 cc's. It's a triple. It's got a lot going for it in terms of a broad power band, I'm sure. But to be able to drop a true $150, well, time will tell. Hopefully we get a chance to see these bikes come to the States. I think a bit of a renewed point of view and maybe an open mind, you'll start seeing these Chinese bikes the way a lot of folks were seeing Japanese bikes back in the day. Are they better? I don't know that you could say that they're better, but they're awfully decent. And in a lot of cases, awfully decent from what you might be comparing it to could be phenomenal. So let me check in with you guys real quick. Let's see. Oh, Mick is in saying the bike looks good. Yeah. Skin say this is right up RMAX alley. Oh yeah, for sure. So those are cool colors. Yes. Mick saying the question's how easy are they to modify? If they are easily modifiable, then they will be serious competition. I think if they bring them, the aftermarket will come. Yeah, skids. Yeah, the ZX4 does buzz out to 16,000. Oh, I just messed that all up. Hold, please. Here we go. Oh, Sam say, not gonna lie, the Chinese bikes are neat. I'm just hoping Harley brings some bikes in from there, the Chinese lines. Yes, I think they were using Hero at one point. And Skid saying, I think Harley Davidson is going to be bringing the starter small cruiser called the Sprint. Not sure about all the details. Sovereign is in. What's going on, man? John's asking, is the CFM V4 for real? That I don't know. Talking about the CF Moto, their new potentially 200 horsepower V4. You know what? Knowing CF Moto, it probably is. I know that they have been teasing it, but you know, we'll see. Oh, Sovereign hanging out with Sam. The Barrett Jackson stream, nice. And look, as far as the other brands that are out there, it's not just the Chinese brands, it's other like Indian brands. Royal Enfield, that's always going to come up. Bajaj, another one that's going to come up. There's a lot of, how do you say, there's a lot of foreign manufacturers that are making bikes with different brands on them. I'm wearing the shirt, Triumph. Hell, if it weren't for Bajaj, Triumph wouldn't have half of their sales, literally. So there's a lot of motorcycles that are being sold that are being made by other manufacturers. But in this case, primarily talking about the Chinese brands, once these bikes start to gain momentum, or once these manufacturers start to gain momentum and these bikes start to land on American shores, I think that it's going to be very interesting how young people start to take to these machines. Are these bikes going to be the next wave of motorcyclists' first purchases? And I guess another better question of that is, if they do make it here, what will the old guard do in response? Brands like Suzuki with the GSXR 600 and 750. It doesn't look like they're going to be showing us anything at EICMA for redesigns or retooling of those bikes. It's going to disappoint a lot of folks, especially when you have bikes like this that are starting to hit other markets. And in many cases, if you're not Euro 5 compliant, you just can't get in. GSXR 600 and 750, if they were Euro 5 compliant, however, that would evolve, either combine the two bikes into one GSXR 800. I don't know. You know what I'm getting at. But the point of this is that we have a ZXJC 820. It's a triple. And it's just fine when it comes to getting Euro 5 compliance, I'm sure. You got the SRK 800 RC. You've also got the SRK 921, which we didn't get into tonight, which is another one making 130 horsepower. Same brand. Well, let's get into that for a second. Hold on. Hold up. Hang on a second. Let me just bear with me just 1 second. And we'll just talk about that. We'll do an honorable mention. How about that? I'll tell you what, we'll do the QJ Motor SU9. How about that? Well, this one has an honorable mention as I'm heading out. So here you go. QJ Moto SU9. Does that bike look a little bit familiar? Does it look just a little bit familiar? Well, it probably does if you're a fan of the MV Agusta. And QJ now owns MV Agusta. And because of that, well, the Super Veloce, a la QJ, there you go. So anyway, again, this is one of those types of bikes where, I don't mind the Voltron styling. The Cafe, Retro, Neo, whatever. I'm cool with that. But I think the main thing for me is, again, you start getting to the specifications of these bikes. I mean, it is a good looking bike, guys. I ain't gonna lie. But 900 cc's, 921 cc's, it's a 4-cylinder making basically 120, well, it's 129 advertised at 10,000 RPM. So very low in the RPM range, very accessible power, and quite a bit of it, as a matter of fact. But yeah, 93 Newton meters. So about 68 to 70, maybe 72 pound-feet of torque is what that translates to, give or take. That's just kind of where we're at with this. These are bikes that are already Euro 5 homologated. So, and I get it. Some of them are maybe Chinese only markets. I don't know. But the reality is, these are the types of motorcycles that you could have once these manufacturers start making it to the States. So, but with that, guys, Mick saying, I had to adjust my lifestyle in order to afford the 2025 GSX-R 1000. I should have never bought it, but oh well, I'm stuck with it now. I understand. That insurance is what got me. Whew. Beautiful bike, though, and they run good. Yes, get out there and enjoy it. Absolutely. But with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Got to get back to work. Listen, get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. And if you made it this far into the show, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It helps the channel more than you will know. And with that, guys, y'all have a good one. Take care.